All right, so on today's episode of Life on Fire TV, I am bringing you Joseph McClendon III. And so Joseph is an international motivational speaker. He has literally traveled the world. He's spoken in over 30 countries. He has literally 6 businesses that gross over $42 million in revenue. And the most prominent thing about Joseph is he is the #1 trainer for Tony Robbins. He's the #1 coach. He's the #1 speaker for Tony Robbins. And so he travels all over the world with Tony. He does, I think it's a day and a half of his UPW events. And that's where I first saw Joseph, was actually in a sea of 10,000 people in LA when I went to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within conference and event. And so one thing led to another. Through networking, we had a good friend, Andy, who connected me with Joseph. And we were able to get Andy to come speak at our private event for only 50 of our closest clients. And what you're about to see is some sound bites and clips from just a very private, scenario, and where Joseph is teaching about communication. He's teaching about all kinds of good things that you have to have that are essential to live your life on fire. So stay tuned and check out Joseph McClendon III.
I want to start off things by asking your permission for 3 things. Number 1 is teaching what I want to teach versus what I would teach. And what I mean by that is I want to give you a choice, because I can do a couple different things here. And one of them is I can give you a speech that's going to help make you feel great and motivated and excited and pumped up, for lack of a better term. And that speech will be magnificent. It will be. And when you leave here, you'll go, that was a great speech, and that was awesome, and that Joseph McClendon was magnificent. Yes, you will say that. But that feeling will only last you about 48 hours. As a matter of fact, how many of you have ever had a great motivational speech or exciting speech that you even learned something, and when you got excited, you said, I'm going to do it, but you went home and you didn't do it? Raise your hand. Okay. Anybody not raising your hand, you lie about other things too. Okay. Because we all have. How many of you have parents? Okay. Yeah. Did your parents ever tell you something and you got excited about it and you said, I'm going to do it, and you didn't do it? Yeah. Okay. Same thing. And the other thing is on the other hand, I could teach you something. As a matter of fact, I want to dovetail with what Barb did. I could teach you something that's going to do what Nick said and asked the question, how many of you want to take your businesses to the next level? So you got a choice. I can give you the motivational speech, and it'll be magnificent, trust me. Or I can teach you something that's going to rock your world. Which one do you want? How many of you want the speech? Just checking, okay? And how many of you want your world rocked? All right, so you committed to that by raising your hand. However, it comes with a price. And the price is 4 things. Number 1, you got to have fun for the next hour and a half. Yay? And that's what it's going to take. And the only reason I'm saying this is for a couple things. I want to be effective. I want to do some of the hows that Barb talked about earlier. To how to make those things happen. How to impact your audience. How to use that tool to impact your audience in a way that's going to cause them to do something, because that's what you want them to do. Yes?
Yes.
So if you're willing to have fun, all I want you to do at the top of your lungs, and don't worry about the people out there or the koi in the pond out there. All I want you to do is at the top of your lungs, one word, you know what the word is, yell it out, yes, as loud as you can on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes! Now that was good. That was good, but I can see there's some apprehension in some of you. Okay? So let's try it again. On the count of 3, just as loud as you can, just yell out the word yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes! It wasn't that much better. So that's number 1, it's just to have fun. Why? Because when we have fun, we're learning more. I'm a psychologist by profession, and so I studied something. I taught at the University of Southern California for several years, and I studied something called super learning. And super learning is, you've all seen what they call virtuoso or child prodigies. What they found out is these kids learn more and learn faster because they're always having fun. We learn more in the first 12 years of our lives than we do the whole rest of our lives because we're having fun. How many of you have children? Okay. All of us have learned more in those first 12 years because kids, that's what they are designed to do. And when we have input senses, 5 of them, and all of them are activated more when we're having fun. So again, having fun is number one. Number two is to play full out. What that means is interact even like you're doing right now, standing up, yelling out, and so on and so forth, so that we can affect your nervous system versus just your intellect. Because as Barb just pointed out, only 10% of our intellect is working at all times, and some of you less. So the second thing is to play full out. What that means is, as I'm doing right now, or as you're doing right now, interact with me, interact with each other, because I'm going to have you do some things so that you can learn it in your nervous system. So if you're willing to have fun and then to play full out, you know what to do on the count of three. 1, 2, 3. Yes! And then the third thing is to have an open mind. What that means is that you're going to hear some things, and I'm sure you've heard them, throughout these last couple of days. And you always do hear things that you don't necessarily agree with, or that may be abstract for you. How many of you have ever heard something, and when you heard it, you said, I don't think so. And then later on, you wish you would have listened to it? Raise your hand. Okay. Fabulous. And so the reason that happens is because in the moment, we use our model of the world, as you were saying. We use what we know and what we believe to make those judgments. So I'm going to ask you to kind of set that stuff outside here for a moment, just for a little while. And you can go get that crap later on, but just set it outside for now. So if you're willing to have fun, to play full out and have an open mind, you know what to do on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yes! Beautiful. And the last one is, anybody that's ever been successful at anything, anybody, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's Nick, whether it's anybody, they've always had a coach, a mentor, or a teacher that they've allowed that coach, that mentor, and or teacher to push them beyond what is comfortable. And with your permission, I'd be honored to be your coach and mentor today. Is that okay?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
You say that now. But later on, you might not agree with me. But remember, you agreed to have an open mind, to play full out, and to now allow me to push you. So fabulous. So if that's the agreement that we have, then yes, we can go forward. So if you would, please, everybody have a seat. And I'm going to share with you a couple things. By the way, as Nick talked about before, I'm from the stage, that's what I do. But I do other things as well. In other words, I do one-on-one coaching. As a matter of fact, my profession, I'm a neuropsychologist. I had a practice in Los Angeles for many, many years, several years ago. And I help people get over fears and phobias and emotional challenges and those type of things in a very short amount of time. And how many of you live here in California at least? Okay, great. So Los Angeles, in case those of you don't know, is what I call Freak City. It truly is. If you want to learn the skill of psychology and you want trial by fire, go to Los Angeles, because every freak in the world is there, every single one. And I got stories I can tell you about so many different types of people that came through. But first of all, I want to share this with you. From my perspective, what Nick was talking about and what we talked about coming up here, and that is my presenting from stage is one thing, but I don't assume that everybody wants to do what I do. How many of you would love to do what I do, by the way? Okay, great. And so that's awesome, but some people not. Some people are here for something else. Maybe this isn't your desire to do that. But what I present to you, what I ask you is this. How many of you interact with people on a regular basis? Okay. How many of you consider yourselves speakers, by the way? Okay. So those some of the same people that raised their hand didn't raise your hand when I asked you if you're a speaker. If you interact with people, unless you're doing mental telepathy, okay, you've got to speak to them. You've got to interact with them. You've got to use that one tool. And what I want to share with you is how to use that tool. And I want to share with you something that is, nobody can compete with you on this, and it's only yours, and it's the one that you have, that you can make the biggest difference in your business and what you do. And I want to back up for a second. I'm really honored to be here. I really thank you for being here, because I'm here as this is my way of giving back in this way. And I honor and I admire everybody in this room. You're all entrepreneurs. And the reason I say that is that I'm here because somebody did something for me many, many years ago, and this is my way of paying it forward. What Nick didn't share with you is I grew up not too far from here, actually about 3 hours from here, a place called Lancaster, California. Anybody heard of that horrible, bleached, cultureless vacuum place? And I grew up out there, and the reason I'm here is when I was 17 and a half years old, 3 grown men tried to take my life because of the color of my skin. And I'd broken down on the side of the road on my motorcycle. And I was just 17 years old. I was going up to San Francisco to see my father. And what happened was my chain came off the motorcycle, so I pushed it into a gas station. It was about maybe 1:30 in the morning. Pushed it into the gas station, and I was working on the bike, and a pickup truck pulled up, and it's a place called Oildale, Bakersfield. And I thought, well, here's some guys that are going to help me, because I had a really nice motorcycle at the time. It was an old Harley Davidson. And so I was working on the bike. The truck pulled up, and I looked around. I turned around, and these 3 big guys get out of the car, out of the truck. And I heard 3 words. I heard these words that obviously I remember these for the rest of my life. And his words were, and I said, "Hi, how you doing?" And his words were, "Well, Nigra, looks like you picked the wrong place to get broke down at." And for the next several minutes, they proceeded to pummel me. And I wedged myself in between the gas pumps to protect myself. And I just remember, obviously getting hit and getting punched. And the things that they were saying were not so kind, obviously. And then the next thing I remember, I woke up the next morning. And I woke up with blood all around me. And I woke up, there was a police car there. And I found out later that the gas station attendant had come in the morning to open the gas station and saw me there. And he called the police. And the police showed up. And they got there. And that's when I woke up. And instead of helping me, what they did was they put me in handcuffs and put me in the back of the car. And I knew something was wrong inside of me, and that I was hurt extremely bad. And then the ambulance showed up, and they told the police, "This guy's in trouble," and they got me out of there and took me to the hospital. And so that affected me. And how it affected me was it destroyed my self-esteem. It destroyed my self-worth, because my belief was, and it happened in that instant, that my belief was that if somebody could do that to me, then I was worthless. And that was my 10%. Actually, became my 90% of my life. And it affected me so much that I became homeless shortly after that. And I lived in a cardboard box behind an old drive-in in Lancaster, California. And obviously, as I said before, I wasn't there because I had a bad upbringing. I had a great upbringing. I had great self-esteem before that and everything, but that's where I wound up. And on my 19th birthday, I had an epiphany. And I'm not going to go into what that epiphany is or how that came about, but the epiphany was that it was going to never be this way again. I didn't know how, I didn't know what was going to change, but I said to myself that it's never going to be this way again. There's going to be a change. I didn't know what to change, I didn't know how to change, but I said it was never going to be that way again. And then I started to decide how it was going to be. It was midnight, and I remember, it's a long story, but I remember sitting there, laying there in the desert, in the middle of the night, planning out my future, what I wanted it to be. And I didn't know how it was going to happen, but the next morning, something interesting happened. Without going through the whole story, somebody came to me and gave me a book. It was a kind person, somebody that I didn't know, that didn't have to do this, gave me a book. And the book was called Think and Grow Rich. If you haven't read the book, go get it. It's the greatest book in terms of personal development, in terms of just changing how you believe about yourself. And I read the book, and it changed my life very, very quickly. And as my life changed, I started noticing some of the things that I was doing that came from the book and taught me about how to be about myself. But when I went, the reason I shared this story with you is when I went back to the gentleman that gave me the book to thank him. I said, "How do I repay you? How do I give back to you for what you've done with me?" And what he said to me was, "How you repay me is you do the same that I've done for you for as many people for the rest of your life." And that's why I do what I do here. And that's why I'm here right now. And that's why I admire you, because where you are right now is the same position. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and start this. I don't have my clicker, so you're going to have to bear with me. And I'm going to share with you a couple things. I'm going to introduce you to a new word, pro-sequences. And it's just the opposite of consequences. Consequences are the negative results that happen as a result of poor decision, poor behavior, poor things that you do or have done in the past. Consequences are the opposite. They are the positive, resourceful, wanted, desired things that happen as a result of awesome decisions, actions, behaviors that you do now or have done in the past. So I have a question for you. My brand, for lack of a better term, is further, faster. Everybody look up here for a second. How many of you want what you want sooner rather than later? Yeah, that's always a resounding yes. Yes. Will you have a clicker? Fabulous. So that's what I'm all about. As a matter of fact, when I shared with you, does it work? Fabulous!
Oh, yeah.
Okay? Give them a hand, ladies and gentlemen. Beautiful. As I shared with you, I'm a psychologist, but I'm a neuropsychologist, and I practice something called neurolinguistics or the neurosciences. And what that means is if you come into me and you got a fear of dogs, what they taught me in college was, and in school, was that you lay down on my couch and I talk to you for 3 to 7 years before you get over that. And so I believe that it shouldn't take that long. As a matter of fact, I remember when I was in school, I went to Cal State Northridge many, many years ago, and I remember one of my professors said to me that psychology is the only profession that you get paid for being ineffective. And I remember going, well, I don't know what that means. What do you mean? And she said, and I know she was joking around, but she said, well, if you have a problem and you come to me and I fix it in one visit, then you're not going to come back every week and give me $100. And I thought, well, that's not right. And so I went on a quest or a search to do it faster, and that's what I learned how to do. If you got a fear or a phobia and you come see me, an hour, maybe an hour and a half, it's going to be done. Now, obviously, you're going to have to do your work as well. But here's what I want you to know, is if you come to me and you got a fear of dogs, guess what's going to be in my office? Take a guess. No. Not just a dog. He's going to be a dog. And by the way, it was Los Angeles, Freak City. Fear of dogs was the #1 thing that I did with people. The second one was men that are afraid of women. Seriously. Ladies, you scare the holy bejesus out of us. You do. Grown men, big strapping guys that would come in, and their biggest fear was, and I know what they came in there for, because I go, how can I help you? And they'd always go like this. These big macho guys would go, well, there's this girl. Yeah. And I knew what it was. And in those cases, by the way, it wasn't just a dog. I had a friend that had a Rottweiler, and I would take peanut butter and put I'd rent his dog for the day and put peanut butter on the roof of the dog's mouth, and the dog would lick his mouth and foam at the mouth. He was a lover of a dog. But I mean, you'll understand why I share this with you a little bit later. And if you had a fear of women, guess what was going to be in my office? Take a guess. And so I share that with you because I'm all about going further, faster in business, in everything that we do in our lives. Not everything, but the things that we aspire to do more and have more. So that's what it's all about. And as I said before, I'm here now because I'm paying it forward and doing, and I have been doing it. That's what I do, whether I'm on stage with Tony or doing whatever I do. I do that because at this stage in my career, in my life, it's about legacy. It's about doing what I committed to doing, and that is paying it forward. So I have a saying, there it is, and that is that those of us that dare to dream while the rest of the world is having a nightmare, you don't have to read it, I'll tell you, I know it. Those of us that dare to dream while the rest of us are having a nightmare, we're not only going to inherit or earn the prosperity that we want, but we're also going to be the examples, shining examples for other people that they can do the same. And that's what your business is about, isn't it? Raise your hand if that's true. Because you have to do so that they can go, oh, I either want that or I want to be like those people so that I can do more. Raise your hand if you agree with me. Okay? So that's what we are. And that is, in my opinion, that's what we owe society. That's the price that we pay, one of the prices that we pay for being an entrepreneur. Otherwise, go get a job. How many of you have had a job before? Okay? And even in that, we still become that. But unless you've been living under a rock, you know that the rest of the world is living a nightmare. They truly are. All you got to do, I've been around the world several times this year, and this is the greatest place on the planet. The United States is the greatest place on the planet. I love my country, and all you got to do is take a look at what's happening in our elections. Don't get me started. to recognize that we got trouble on the horizons and we need true leaders. Yes?
Yes.
And that's you. That's all of us. So we're the shining examples. But here's the caveat. And the caveat is the spoils, ultimately, they don't just go to everybody that wants to, because everybody wants stuff. Everybody desires stuff. And they don't go to those who decide that, yes, I'm going to do something. They go to those who actually do something. Because we've all desired and wanted, and as I said before, most of you raised your hand, that we've all wanted something, we've desired to do something, we even learned something, and we said, that's the thing, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go home and do it, and we didn't do it. Raise your hand if I can see, just to make sure that you are on the same page. We didn't do it, and there's a reason why, and that's why I'm here. I want to share that with you. And for most of us that do, and for most of the things that we have to do, it's not as difficult as it seems. It's in terms of the actual functioning of doing it. But most of us procrastinate and hesitate. So how many of you procrastinate, by the way? The others are going like this. I'll raise my hand later. Okay. So I have a question for you. Why are you here? And how long is this event?
3 days.
3 days. Okay, so you've taken 3 days out of your time, a substantial amount of your energy, your time, your efforts, and capital. But why are you here?
Learn how to do it quicker, faster.
One guy. Okay. The rest of you are looking at me like this. Okay. This is my dog Winston. Now I'm going to use this throughout this presentation because this is what you're talking about, that 90% where most of us live. Okay. Winston, I love my dog. He's a French bulldog. He's an awesome dog, but he's just dumber than a box of wood. And that expression right there is what you're looking at. I asked you, and I've been asking you. You guys want to go further, faster, and you're entrepreneurs and all these things. And when I asked this question, I'm doing this for a reason. By the way, everything that I do from this point forward, from this point forward, everything that I do as you watch yourself tie all this stuff together, everything that I do has a reason and a purpose. And so when I ask you this, and most of you look like Winston, it tells me a couple of things about you. First off, and again, I'm going to keep going back to you, what you talked about early on, was we have stories and we have chatter going on inside our heads. And that went off like firecrackers with all of you when I asked that question. Some of you went inside your head, well, I'm not going to talk right now. I'm not going to speak up. Or some of you went, well, I just don't know. Or some of you were trying to formulate it or whatever. But whatever went on in your mind in that moment, I'm going to tell you right now, is the thing in general that keeps you from getting what you want further faster. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's what keeps you in that 90% of the time. That's your story. Because the story isn't just this pre-programmed thing that goes on underneath you all the time. It happens as a result of something that has stimulated you in the moment. My question caused that story or that identity to come up inside you, with the exception of you. Your story's a little bit different. His in the moment, he spoke up. He was the only one in the room here. You guys are all entrepreneurs. You're the people who all said, yes, I'd like to be a speaker. Yes, I'm a speaker. So on and so forth. And I just gave you the opportunity to speak. And you spoke, but it was inside your head. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
So one of the things I want to share with you, and it is my profession, if you will, is to help people get outside of their head or what's going that story underneath to bring it forward so that they can bring it forward in life. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's exciting to you. Okay. So and by the way, I know why you're here. It was a loaded question, right? Tell me if this isn't it. You're here to create more money. Raise your hand. And things and experiences so that you can contribute more and live better lives and feel happy. Is that what you're here for? Yes?
Yes.
Anybody disagree? Now, obviously, there's more specifics to you and your specific things and whatever your business is or what your passion is, but this pretty much covers it, yes?
Yes.
Anybody add anything else to this? I didn't think so. Say again?
See where you want, when you want, with who you want.
Yeah, I think that's here, yeah. All here. Okay. And all that stuff, those are your experiences, okay? And all those things, and like I said, everybody has specific, you can break this down into specific things, but as you look at this, that's pretty much why you're here. But let me ask you a question, okay? First, this is my organizing principle, number one. I say organizing principle, it's just a place where I come from. And if you can use this to change the quality of your life, that's great, and you can use it to go further faster, that's even better. anytime that we're interacting with one or more persons, you have the unique privilege, and I mean it's a privilege and an opportunity to impact their lives for the greater good. In other words, help them do those same things. Let's go backwards. Help them do that, because that's what everybody on the planet's for. So anytime that you have the opportunity to talk to your child, to talk to a group of 10,000 people, or 4 people, or 50 people, or whatever. And by the way, I love what Nick said. It's not necessarily just from the stage. It can be your webinars. It can be your videos that you make for people, any way that we interact with people. How many of you do Facebook? Okay, pretty much every, and I don't know, in this group, I don't know whether you guys use that as a tool or whatever, but even there, how you present yourself, how you interact, and how you impact other people, you always have that opportunity and that privilege of impacting their lives. And in the positions that you are, you have such an awesome opportunity to do that, because you have a message, a product, or an opportunity that you can help people change the courses of their lives. And they're looking for you, aren't they? They're out there. Most people, when you say Facebook, it's just social networking. They're saying, here's me eating pie. But guess what they want? And that's why that thrives, is because it is there because people want. People want to be led. People want to be helped to be impacted. Does this make sense? Yes. I'm going backwards. Sorry. Okay. So that's my organizing principle. That's anytime you interact with anybody. I don't care if it's the guy that parks your car. That's your opportunity to impact him and change his life. I don't care if it's your gardener. I don't care if it's whatever. Anytime, if you come from that place right there, everything changes. So, if a species, or I'm going to say this, a species is defined by the tools that it uses. Any species on the planet, with regard to where it sits on the food chain. For example, you got this is the Pacific sea otter. They're adorable. And what they do is they swim down to the bottom of the ocean, and they get like abalone and clams and things like that. And they get a rock, and they use that rock as a tool. They lay it on their tummies, and they smash it open and eat the meat out. It's a pretty smart animal, yes? And then you have the New Caledonian crow. By the way, I love the Discovery Channel. And so what this bird does is he goes and he gets cactus quills, the thorn out of a cactus, and what he does is he finds the holes in wood and in the ground, and he pokes in there, and he stabs insects and worms and pulls them out and eats them off of that. Pretty smart animal. And obviously, chimpanzee is really high, right under man. They even make weapons, but they make tools to make tools. They're an awesome animal. And then you got this guy. The North American bloated couch potato. I notice how he's holding himself. Just making sure. Okay. This is the guy that's at the top of the food chain. He's got opposable thumbs, and he's got, maybe you can see it in his hand, he's got a tool there. That's his main tool. Seriously. It's between that and the cell phone. Of course, we don't like to think of ourselves that way as human beings. We're like, look, no, of course, this is the mated pair, okay? We like to think of ourselves more like this. The rare, happy, healthy, productive human. All white. And I meant their clothes. That's the way we like to think of ourselves. So, which tool best defines us as human beings? And how can we use that tool to do the thing that I said before, to impact other people's lives, to help them go further faster, so they can have more and do more and be wherever they want to be, and all those things that we said before. Have great experiences and contribute back and all those things, and live healthy, happy lives. Which is the greatest tool? Is it? Well, by the way, you guys are looking at me that way again, but is the cell phone? Arguably, it could be, couldn't it? How many of you have a cell phone? How many of you, just to prove it, that this is one of our main tools and how important it is to us, raise your hand if you've ever lost your cell phone. How'd that feel? How many of you had that? Oh, dear God. All of us, that's how important it is. But I disagree with you. I think the greatest tool, and by the way, I say that because most of us never go more than 10 feet away from our phones. Most of us, it's so close to us all the time. The only time it's not on our person is when we sleep. And most of us is sitting right there on the nightstand, charging, thinking, doing what it does. But here's what I say. It's our voice. It's our voice. That's what defines you. That's what sets you apart from all the other animals, to be able to use that voice in a way and be specific about it to do the things that I said before. This is what defines you. It's the one thing that you have that is individual, that is unique in your business, in whatever that you do in your life, that nobody else has it, and nobody else can compete with you if you use it correctly, if you use it the right way. Raise your hand if this makes sense. Yes. Your voice. How many of you have a voice?
Yes.
Yes. We all do. Remember, it's not just the voice. I'm going to talk to you. By the way, I want to ask your permission when this is over to share with you something I'm passionate about, my business partner. By the way, how many of you have met Andy, my business partner? Have you guys met Andy? He's been just an unbelievable friend, an unbelievable business partner. He and I have been working on something, and I want to ask your permission to share with you what that is towards the end, if I have time. Is that okay?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
So that voice that you have, it's not just, as I said, because some of you, it's not about just being in front of people. I want to encourage you to do that because you get to impact more and more people in doing that. But that's not it. It's whatever you use your voice for. We already determined earlier that you use that voice to present yourself, to present your product, and so on and so forth. But the better you're able to use that, the external voice and the internal voice, which is critical, which is really, really important, because you all just demonstrated that internal voice kept you from not speaking up. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Watch this. Everybody put your books down. Now, by the way, how many of you are here, as I said before, that you consider yourself ambitious? Say aye.
Aye.
How many of you consider yourself just this side, or at least willing to be aggressive? Say aye.
Aye.
And how many of you consider yourselves entrepreneurs? Say aye.
Aye.
Put your pencils to your books down for a second. Everybody stand up. Okay, that was just sad. Just sit down. Sit down. That was sad. Okay. Now, can I use your chair for a second? Yeah. Sit down. I just set you up, and by the way, everything that I do has a reason and a purpose. I just set you up by asking you those questions, yet when I asked you to stand up, this is what 90% of you, if not all of you, did. When I said stand up, you went, oh. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you're entrepreneurs. You are guys that are, and women that are out there wanting to make a difference. I said, are you aggressive? Are you ambitious? You said, yes! Yet you stood up like that. And let me ask you a question. Wait, I still need that for a second. Sorry. Let me ask you a question. Would you do business with somebody like that?
Nope.
No.
You probably would if their product was nice or great. But would you do business with somebody like that if you had the opportunity to do it with somebody else that had more enthusiasm and energy? Yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely. You wouldn't do it with that person, you do it with somebody else, right? And that's what that somebody else has over you, by the way. It's not the person with the greatest product, it's the person with the greatest voice. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And the person that demonstrates that, and that voice that caused you to go, okay, let me stand up or whatever, versus the voice that caused you to stand up with enthusiasm is the voice that you need to work on. Raise your hand if that makes sense.
Yes.
Because remember, I'm about the how. It's not just to point stuff out, but how do we do that? And you won't necessarily understand. So from here on out, and I'm going to have you do this a couple times. And remember, you guys said that you would play full out. Every time I ask you to stand up, here's how I want you to stand up. Watch very closely because it's very complicated. When you hear me say stand up, I want you to do this. Yes! Want to see it again?
Yes. Yes.
Watch very closely because it's very complicated. When I say stand up, you go, yes! Okay? Now watch this. And by the way, you know I'm going to say stand up because I'll say put your books and your notepads down, okay? Stand up! Yes! Actually, that was pretty good. That was pretty good. Try it again. Sit down, sit down, sit down. And by the way, I'm drunk with power right now. Stand up! Yes! Here, have a seat. Stand up! Yes! till I recognize that everybody has got it. You want to know how I know everybody's got it?
How?
Because with the exception of me and this guy here, I know what's happening to your body right now. You want to know how I know? Because white people change color. You guys are looking at me like, ooh, we found out. They know now. Okay? When you get excited, you turn bright red. You stay in the sun too long, you look like lobsters. If you get slapped around and beat up, you turn black and blue. And you call us colored? I joke around about it, but it's the truth. I can judge, and I use other methods, if you will, of determining where somebody is. That observation. That's what you were talking about before. Is when we go, we have this feeling or this understanding of how we function. We're not necessarily understanding how they're functioning. Well, it's a process of this. I'm being silly about it, but it really is true. I know what people are doing. There's subtle things that I can notice that people are doing. This is your audience. These are your people. And when you can tell, this is just one example, but when you can tell these things and when you can spot these things, then you know how to interact with them. So go ahead and have a seat. Give yourself a hand. Yes! All this is going to make sense here shortly. Okay, so your voice. Your voice. So, by the way, what do all these amazing, unbelievable people have in common? Notice I put myself down in the corner as well. Okay? What do they all have in common? Their voice? Yes. Okay? Here's what I say. And by the way, all of these people, because you might say, okay, well, they're rich and they're famous and so on and so forth, and they've helped a lot of people. But here's what I say. They have their voice, number one. Write these down. Really important. They have their voice. They have their words. And they have presence. And I didn't say presence. Presence. P-R-E-S-E-N-T-S. The ability to present. They present themselves to people. And there's a difference between presenting and speaking. There's a huge difference. I'm going to share with you here in just a little while. Most people speak. Which is really great. You spoke to Barb about how to make that disgusting sandwich. In the end, it wound up being pretty horrible, right? Because he was speaking to her. And how many of you, as you were watching, your name again? Carlos. How many of you, as you were watching Carlos, you're going, Carlos, tell her to turn the knife over. Carlos, tell her to grab this. How many of you were editing what you wanted Carlos to say while you were doing this, okay? Everybody has their opinion, right? But then if you were up here doing it, Carlos would have been going, do it this way, you jackass. Everybody. But Carlos spoke to her. And when you speak to somebody, we speak to them often the way that we speak to ourselves. That conversation and the way that we converse with ourselves causes a similar result. Because most of us, again, I keep going back to Barb, most of us stay in that 90% mode because of the way that we speak to ourselves. And our audiences stay in that 90% mode because of the way that we speak to them versus presenting to them, versus giving a presentation to them that causes them to move, okay? Your voice allows you to create awareness. Remember what I said before, foundational tool. Anytime that you have the opportunity, or you're speaking or you're interacting with anybody, you have the opportunity to change their lives. And you change their lives, their impact, by causing their awareness to change, by changing their intention and your intention, by causing urgency. This is what causes people to buy, by the way. Creating passion in yourself and others. And I want to keep reminding you that because it's you too. As a matter of fact, it's got to be you first. Because something will not or will come out of your mouth based on what you speak, how you speak to yourself. How many of you are maybe not so kind in your conversation to yourself? Let me reiterate this. Here's what I call it. How many of you are members of what I call the Self-Beaters Club? And I didn't mean the obvious when I was talking about it. When I said self-beaters, I mean pleasure yourself. I meant beating yourself up. Yeah, some of you are dropping your hands. Oh, that's what you. Yeah. That conversation that you have with yourself and have had with yourself for most of your life is hindering you, and you know it. And some of you found ways of dissipating it a little bit. Some of you just pushed it down, but it still runs constantly. And so the name of the game is obviously, just like the fear of the dogs, is address that and do something about it. Remember the earlier slide that I showed? It's not the people that intend to. It's not the people that know. Knowledge is not power. You all know what to do. You know how to do it. But we don't always do what we know. How many of you have ever tried to lose weight? Okay? Losing weight is simple. It is. You quit putting so much food in this hole, and you move your body, and you'll lose weight. Now, that can't be any more simple than that. Everybody knows that, but we don't always do what we know. Why? Because how we speak to ourselves when we have those cravings, when there's cake or broccoli, how we speak to ourselves about the cake and eating the cake or eating the broccoli is what causes us to do. And what causes us to do is what causes the results. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So knowing something is only 10% or less. I say it's 7%. Knowing something is not it. How many of you have seen or experienced somebody that knows far less than you do, but they're further along on the success ladder than you?
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. I have he's almost 10, he'll be 10 years old in January. My son, he loves video games. Now, I know that at that age, he shouldn't be playing them all the time, so he's only allowed to play them 1 hour every day on weekends. And he's adjusted to it. But on the weekends, I say, okay, you got your hour, go do what you want to do. And that's just the way he is. This is not how he is right now. He doesn't hate me for it, just like that. It's just how our life is. So, this has been several months ago. I go downstairs in our little theater room, and I go down there, and has the opportunity. It's his hour to play video games, but he's not playing video games. He's watching YouTube of somebody else playing video games. And I go, dude, you only have an hour. Why are you watching somebody else do it? Get in the game! You can do this! And he looks at me like I'm just the dumbest. He looks at me like I'm Winston. And he goes, Dad, that's how I learn how to play the game. I go, okay, well, that's interesting. Okay, I got it. I let him alone. He does. And he does that. And matter of fact, he does that more than he plays the games anymore. But he started doing it more because he would watch that for like 15 minutes and then he'd go play his game, right? And now it's like he watches it for like 45 minutes, and if he ever gets to the game, but he watches it, and I kick him with a one. I go, I noticed that you're watching more of this. Why is that? And he goes, because I really like this guy that's doing it. And I always ask this question because I want to be a responsible parent. I go, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says to me, I want to be a YouTuber. My gut's twisted. I thought, oh, God, son, And I didn't want to crush his dream. So I said, oh, that's interesting. And I stepped back and bit my tongue and went away and everything. And I thought, okay, well, what's something that I could say to him to encourage him yet to move him along in a different pace? Because, a YouTuber, honestly, let's get real. So I went back and I said, well, listen, that's an awesome goal. And I want you to think about this, okay? Because I don't know that there's a place you can study being a YouTuber. And he looks at me like, he goes, it's coming, right? And he goes, and I said, so who's making the money in this is the guy that owns YouTube, and it's a businessman, so you might want to consider being a businessman. He goes, okay, yeah, I'll think about that, Goes away. Actually, 2 days later, I'm in the airport, flying somewhere, and there, maybe you guys have seen this, on Time magazine is this kid that he's watching on television. Forget what his name is. Yeah. And he's there. This kid earned $10 million being a YouTuber. Let me say that again. $10 million being a YouTuber. Now, I don't know, I'm not going to go into it because I read the damn article. I go, well, unbelievable. This guy, and he's just a great kid. If you guys have seen him, just a great kid. We're talking about the same guy with the British accent. And that's all he does. He just has fun. I know thousands more than this kid does. Thousands more. I'm smarter than him. $10 million. So when I go to my son, I go, yeah, let's be a YouTuber. But that conversation that you have with yourself makes a big difference. Speaking, the difference between speaking and presenting. Speakers, as you're speaking to somebody, remember, I'm talking about from the stage or one-on-one, 1 in 50, whatever you do. Speaking is the practice of impacting people with your words, and we just saw what happened with making peanut butter sandwiches. Presenting, on the other hand, is the art of empowering people with your words, your thoughts, your energy, your psychology, your physiology, meaning your body, to the point that they take action and do something and bring whatever it is that you're presenting to them to fruition. Said differently, you cause them to buy your products, to do something. To do something. Otherwise, you're just giving them words and they fall back on that 9%. They fall back on what they've always been programmed to do. And most of the time, with regard to selling something, if you will, that program is, well, I'm going to wait. Or, well, I'm not sure about that. Or, this person's trying to sell me something, or so on and so forth. Raise your hand if this makes sense. Okay? Because remember, their conversation, their words are constantly going as well. You've got to find a way to get in there. So presenting is the way to do it. Here's organizing principle number 2. Life is much simpler than we've been led to believe. Just said it. Losing weight is simple. But most of us feel like it is difficult. We feel like, by the way, somebody told me the reason why so many, at least Americans, are so fat is because this hole is bigger than this hole. You're all kidding.
All right, so I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Life on Fire TV. And as always, I would be so grateful for you to like, comment, and share. And then also, I would love for you to check out what we're doing at lifeonfiremovement.com. So we are super excited. We have just rolled out something that I had been dreaming about and visualizing for literally 3 years, since before I started Life on Fire. So it is a game-changing personal development community, and you just have to check out what we're doing. So I want you to go from just watching Life on Fire TV to joining our tribe in the Life on Fire family. So go to lifeonfiremovement.com and check out what we're up to, and let us help you get your life and your business or career to the next level, and we'll do it together. So check out lifeonfiremovement.com, and I look forward to catching up with you soon. Cheers.